The two pieces are now glued, and if you look closely, planed. And that is my fault, because what I did was to forget to switch the iPad on, and I spent about 10 minutes planing this with nobody watching what I was doing. So very kindly, what I've done is to put together two pieces that look a bit similar. That's how it looked like before I started, and I'm going to take you through the process as if that failure of technology didn't happen. I've turned my Workmate round so that I've got it bumped up against a skirting board, and that way I won't have to chase the Workmate across the room while I'm planing. I've put two stops on my Workmate to plane against, but because they're so high, I've got to have a piece of MDF to act as a stop, so that when I plane this, it isn't going to catch the plane on the two orange bits. We'll get back to this bit afterwards. I'll continue working on that bit, but I'll just show you the process on this piece. I'm going to be using my number 5 plane on this because it's got weight behind it, and when you're planing, as I'll show you, you have to use the weight of the plane a bit like using your opponent's weight in judo, really. Use the momentum of the plane and its weight to carry it through the planing process, and that way you don't have to use too much muscle power. So I'm going to look at the high bits first of all. This is slightly domed in that direction, this is slightly domed in that direction. So I'm going to work in the middle, just on the high bits. So the first thing I've got to do is to set my plane so that I'm taking enough off to make a difference to the surface, but not so much that the planing becomes really difficult. Again, it's that optimum cut. Now that feels quite good. So I'm working down the middle of the work. Okay. I've got to put my foot on. Wow. The shavings are reasonably fat still. I could probably do with making them a little bit finer. So, this is an interesting point. There's a slight, I don't know whether you can see, let's hold it that way. There's a slight gap in the mechanism. This stirrup bit that I mentioned earlier is a loose fit in that wheel, so when I turn the wheel anti-clockwise and clockwise, it goes through a middle section where it's actually not moving that stirrup and it's not adjusting the blade. Now when I adjust the plane, what I have to do is to end up on a clockwise turn so that the wheel is bumped up against that stirrup, otherwise when I plane, the plane blade can slip up the frog. So no matter what I do in the way of adjustment, I have to end up on a clockwise turn that stops when the wheel hits that stirrup. That's a bit lighter. Now I can make my life easier still if I wax the bottom of the plane. So if I rub a little bit of wax on the sole, it's an ordinary tea light candle left over from Christmas, it's all the friction, well not all the friction, but a considerable amount of friction away from the process, and my life becomes a lot easier. It's just that small amount that will do the trick. So I check how we're doing. I've got a little bit of a gap on this edge, but other than that it's turning out pretty well. If I have a look at it in this direction, again it's pretty flat. So just continue to work on that a little bit, and then we'll go back to the original piece. You haven't seen the effect of adjusting the plane and the effect the plane's having on the wood. Check it again. And that's really good. That's as flat as it need be for the purposes that we're going to use it for. So here it is. That's the bit that you missed. Have a little look. I don't know whether you can see, but there's light I can see on this side, a little bit of light on that side. So again, I've got to work on this middle section here. Okay, on the far end, but down this end, still quite curved. I'll turn the wood round and we'll keep on going with that a bit. It's this area here that needs to be taken off. And that I'm comfortable with. Just check it in that direction. We're fine. So this is a surface that I can live with. If I wanted to make this an even thickness all the way around, which isn't important for this particular process or this particular project, then I'd take a marking gauge and I'd draw a line away from my face side and I just planed out to the line. But for this bench hook, visually that looks alright to me. I think we'll leave it at that. All I've got to do is now to clean up these edges and make sure they're square to those ends, which I know to be square because that's what we did earlier. I want to mark this side up at 90 degrees to this edge. I know this is 90 degrees, but because I glued two bits together, I'm just going to run the plane across the surface of both ends just to make sure there's not a little bump in between the two pieces and to check I've got a dead straight edge to work from. I put my work really low in the vise so that there's no leverage when I start planing. This is fractionally higher than that, so I'm going to work from this side, settle the plane on the work. Now I'm quite careful not to take the plane blade over that end because it'll split the wood out like it has already. Just check that's got no light showing through. A little bit more if I settle it. And then what I'll do, I'll turn it round and come back the other way. That's now dead straight. I can remark my face side and face edge. That's going to be the bottom, it's going to be the top. So this will be my face side and my face edge is going to be this bit. And I can then mark my side 90 degree angles against that edge, extending my square using that steel rule. Being careful I don't shift it as I draw the line. So that's going to be one side of my bench hook, and if I flip it over, this is going to be the other side of my bench hook. Taking as little off as I can. And if that's right, that measurement, 132 millimeters, 132 millimeters, absolutely fine. And I just plane those two sides down to the line. Now, because I'm taking more material off this end than that end, what I do is to take more shavings off this end to bring this down quicker. And again, I don't reset the plane because I know that I'm just taking the mountains off that rough edge, the mountain peaks, I should say. Not quite down to the line yet. Before I get down to the line, I'm going to just check to see that edge is square. This is my face side, so I check from there. If anything, I've got to take more off this side. Settle my plane on the work, tilt it over slightly. And keep that angle until I get full thickness shaving. And finally, I've got complete shaving from here to here. I'm down to the line all the way along. It's just visible still, which is as it should be. And that edge is dead square to this surface as well. Flip it over, do the other side. And that is square. So there we are, a prepared rectangular 90 degrees starting point for my bench hook. I'm pleased. Having finished my base, I've now got to make a stop that's going to allow me to bump the piece of wood I'm sawing up against it. And I've decided, because this is 137 millimeters wide, that a suitable width for that would be 115 millimeters, and a suitable depth would be 25 probably. Because I put some effort into making this nice and even, I'm going to use this to make my 2 bits of battening from. And before I do that, I have to plane an edge on here to measure from. Dead square.